All right, guys, welcome back to the Canadian Real Estate Homefront Podcast. This is episode 51. If you want to book a buyer or seller call, you can click the first link down in the description below. There's no pushy sales tactics. We just get to know your situation and you see if we're a good fit for you. So click that link down below if you want to book a call with us to get us to know us better. But today we have a special guest on, Peter Fretcliffe. I think I said that right. He's going to chat with us everything about the Canadian economy, what he does, which is super interesting for any first-time home buyers or anything like that. So, Peter, welcome to the show. If you don't mind just telling us a little bit about what you do.
Thanks for having me. I work with businesses and groups to facilitate benefits and pension plans. And then I work with the employees to help them on their goals, make sure that they're saving for the right things, able to buy homes, budgeting properly, anything and everything when it comes to their financial lives.
Cool. Do you find that a lot of people you help are like first-time home buyers? Is that kind of like the demographic that you help, or is it just anyone within the company basically?
To be honest, within the company, it's anyone and everyone. Part of my value add when I work with a company is to work with everyone from the president, CEO, all the way down to, the person who got hired on their very first day. And so very different conversations between all of them. The first-time home buyers, a lot of it is about education and having them understand where they can save, what they can do to best prop themselves up. And we're at a point in time where, it's one of the hardest times that we've had to purchase a home in any city, let alone, Toronto.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Do you notice a lot like your older clients they already have the primary residence, they've done pretty well for themselves on that, even though they haven't sold the property and got the equity out. But are they more the ones that are investing in like another property, or do you find that they're more investing in like equities and stuff like that, while the first-time home buyers are they kind of investing in like the S&P 500 or just trying to get a small return as they save up, or are they just holding it in like a GIC?
For the established individuals who already own their primary residence, we'll call it, they're looking nowadays, at least in the past 5 years, to diversify. Whether that's diversify in terms of their geographical investment or in terms of their asset. So getting a condo and renting it out, investing in a different part of the world, whatever the case may be. Something I've seen quite a bit of is their kids going off to university, and rather than the parent pay rent for their kid, they'll buy a condo in that city, assuming it makes sense. And they'll have their child live in that condo. And then after the 4 years, for some people 5, they'll keep renting it out to students and just use it as kind of a piggy bank at the end of the day and have someone else pay their mortgage. But for the younger individual, a lot of them are turning more towards condos. There's less and less of a desire to own a house from what I've seen. A lot of them are disheartened, to purchase a home because it's so expensive. It's become such a large amount of someone's budget as a percentage basis that they're losing confidence in it. And so they're turning to smaller and smaller places, which, you should get into what you can afford, but they're losing steam. And a lot of people are thinking about simply renting for the rest of their life, which poses its own challenges.
Yeah, there's no doubt we're becoming like a renter's economy, especially with young people just so disheartened by it all. Like I know anyone that I help, if they're buying like a semi-detached home or even a detached home, like 99% of the time, like the parents are gifting them 100, 200K of equity that they've built up from selling that family home. They bought the home for 200, 300K and they ended up selling it for 2 million. So they've been able to realize those gains tax-free and then help the child out because they don't want the child to, move to Edmonton or something or move far away where they'll never see their grandkids. So what I constantly see from parents is that we'd rather help you today versus, when I pass, then you get the money. So that's a big avenue. But I know what you mean with the condo market. The condo market right now, especially in Toronto, like what I'm noticing is 50% of condo owners were investors. But now with these rates, it doesn't make sense. condo fees, taxes, high rates. A lot of them picked variable rates too, because historically variable did do better than the fixed rate. And also it allowed them to be more liquid on the property to pay less penalties to get out of the mortgage, except like now it's not really the same because the variable rate's so high. But yeah, it's an interesting market, an interesting time for young people. I guess in terms of like the government programs, do you think that there is good programs out there for first-time home buyers to save for a house, or do you think that there's some lacking kind of incentive to help the first-time home buyer?
Absolutely. There's a number of different places for people to save. The best place currently is the First Home Savers account. It is an investment account, even though it's called a savings account. If someone wants to put it into the S&P 500, they can do that. But what it allows is when dollars flow into this account, they can use it on their taxes to get a tax credit similar to your RSP. But then when it flows out of that account, any growth on those dollars is now tax-free. And so that is the best place for a young person to start when it comes to saving for a home. Now, there's caveats to it, of course, like with any plan. You know, you can only put in $8,000 a year. It's similar to a TFSA. It does bank, which is good. So it's not a case of use it or lose it. And so from my experience with the past 2 years that it's been out, clients are loving it. I've seen a lot of talk about adding it as a form of a pension plan at work. And so most company pension plans, you know, you'll contribute to your RSP and the company will match that RSP up to a certain amount or whatever the case is. And so I'm hearing more and more chatter that companies are trying to demand and trying to ask insurers to add this as an option so that the employee can pay into the FHSA and the employer will match into a retirement plan.
Okay, like similar to an RRSP.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it just gives the employee a big leg up when it comes to their specified financial goal, right? If your primary goal is to buy a house, you know, why would you choose to save for in an RRSP? You know, there are ways to pull money out of an RRSP for home buying through the first home buyers plan, but it's not as effective as an FHSA. And so if you're able to work within the FHSA realm, you should be able to.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it's interesting to see all these plans come into effect all of a sudden. So yeah, I guess like with everything that's happened in terms of like policy and everything like that, like it feels like all of a sudden Justin Trudeau is just ready to go and save the housing market, and he's going to allow young people to get back into the market. 2/3 of Canadians own real estate. So if he was to really help people get into the market, we'd need prices to come down significantly. So that means 2/3 of Canadians would be affected by a huge price drop in equity. Say they have a HELOC on their home. We were kind of chatting about this in the car before. Do you think that, you know, the market's going to be propped up? Like, do you see a crash coming, or do you think that, I know it's a crystal ball question, or do you think that, there's just too many people who have too much financial gain in real estate and prices probably won't come down for the younger generation?
Selfishly, I hope prices continue to go up.
Because you're a homeowner.
And my wife and I bought our second home. We sold the first and then bought the second at the height of the ramp up in home prices. So we've seen a drastic decline in value in our own home, which doesn't exactly feel great.
Yeah.
But having a long-term view on home ownership, I have no doubt in my mind that'll go back up. You know, over the next 10, 20, 30 years, I doubt that home price appreciation will be down from here. You know, don't have a crystal ball, like you said, so I can't really say over the next 6 months, but what I think might happen is we might see some interest rates falling, not drastically. Tiff Macklem's a really tough job right now. because inflation is down, but people are still feeling the pinch. We have rates at an all-time or recent all-time high, and he doesn't want to drastically cut them to cause home prices to become even more not unsustainable, but unrealizable for those trying to get into the market. So he's on a bit of a knife's edge in terms of what to do. I don't envy his job because he's getting flack from both sides. But I do think that we'll hopefully see a little bit of relief on coming down the pipeline. And I think that this might be a bit of a wake-up call to some people when it comes to overloading debt, taking debt that's a variable rate, especially young people who might be more rate sensitive.
Did you feel, you said you bought at the height of the market, did you feel pressure? Like, did you feel like I had to do this at this time? Because a lot of people say that, right? A lot of people say, I've seen a lot of smart people get caught up at the height of the market. And it's not that, it's just like you don't see an end in sight until like kind of a black swan happens. And, I guess we kind of knew interest rates were going to go up, but not as aggressively as they did. So I guess did you kind of feel like did you lose out on a few houses and then, you went in on one kind of firm? Is that kind of what happened?
Yes and no. We knew we wanted out of the place that we were at. It was built in 1910, 2-bedroom.
No basement.
Very unfinished, we'll put it that way.
Yeah.
But we renovated it all the way down to the studs and rebuilt it. A lot of that work we did ourselves, but it was not going to be sustainable if my wife and I wanted to have kids.
Okay, that's a fair point. I guess it was more of a timing thing for you. And plus, you kind of had a property already. Mm-hmm. So that property's probably down from where someone purchased it from you, I'm assuming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we sold and bought at the height. And it was incredibly stressful. We worked with Brooke. She was incredible. But we sold on a Monday or we bought on a Monday, sold that following Monday. So it was a 7-day turnaround. And we had to get the entire place staged, all of our stuff pulled out, all of the staging stuff pulled in. And that turnaround was just all hands on deck.
Yeah.
And Brooke did a phenomenal job for us. And she, when it came to negotiating, we had a bully offer in, and she just kind of kept pushing their buttons to try and see what we could do, and it all worked out. So we were really, really fortunate for that.
Awesome. Yeah. I guess since you had the other side, a lot of people right now that, just had the one side of the up market, right? They bought at the very peak. So, they could be down 20% on their investment. So to see it go down even more, which I don't think will happen, but you never know. I think Tiff Macklin might be forced to do a rate cut in June. I was reading this morning from RBC, just saying that the GDP per capita is just negative, and the only thing that's masking it or keeping alive is the immigration numbers. So Canada's productivity is just down so much, and when you look at the states, their GDP per capita since I think 2019, it's up 7%. So they're getting more productive, and Canada's getting less productive with more people. So yeah, I think he might have to divert from the Federal Reserve and actually cut rates before the Fed cuts. RBC said they see, and I think this is aggressive, but they see the Bank of Canada cutting 100 basis points this year and the Federal Reserve cutting only 25 basis points this year.
I think 100 points would be aggressive. I think that would be a case of we've got an event on the horizon and we need to do something about it beforehand.
I think where people don't understand is like if rates come down very fast, there's something bad going on.
Exactly.
The economy's in turmoil.
Yeah. So if you look at rate increases and decreases over time, a lot of the times you'll see recessions beginning when rate increases actually start coming back down, kind of reversing that trend. And so what they don't want to do is, be the catalyst to something that might not have been there. And so this whole, higher for longer aspect isn't necessarily a bad thing. A lot of people have been very resilient. A lot of people have had pain, but we haven't seen the mass defaults that they were predicting. Defaults are up, but they're not astronomical.
Do you think that's artificially inflated? I'm giving you some hard questions, but do you think that's artificially inflated by banks extending amortizations? Do you think if the banks didn't extend the amortizations because they have skin in the game, obviously, like, people don't own homes, banks own home until you pay it off. Do you think that artificially extending the amortization period has kind of saved Canadian real estate a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's their prerogative, right? Why would they want to have someone foreclose?
Yeah.
There's no reason for them to want to see someone foreclose on a home and get kicked out. And, whether that's an individual or a family of four or whatever that looks like, the bank is looking to have their loan repaid. And, similar to car companies, when they have to do a recall, they'll probably just do a stress test on it, see if they can make their money back and see how long it might take, and say, okay, well, it doesn't make sense right now. Let's just, push out the amortization. And ARM mortgages, where they can push out the amortization, have been around for quite a while. And so I don't think anyone's in the mortgage industry is overly surprised that that was a lever that was pulled by the banks.
Right.
Because it's been set up for a long, long time like that.
Yeah. No, good points. Do you think that Canada's in a recession right now?
Depends on the definition of recession.
Peter's definition of a recession.
Right. I definitely think we've had a drop in productivity. I think that, it seems cliche to say at this point, but I think AI is pushing things along, similar to when the internet first was implemented in the mass market. I think more and more people are developing new AI software and abilities to incorporate that into their businesses. So they might not need to, let's say, hire as much, but the individual employee is that little bit more productive. And so I think, this is all my personal observations, but I think that might be something that's staving off a recession. I think there's one coming eventually.
Yeah.
But you're not hearing about mass layoffs, as not too many mass layoffs. You're hearing about it, but a lot of it is still the froth from the pandemic, right? There was a ton of pandemic hiring going on. You look at Shopify, right? They hired thousands and thousands and thousands. And then when the pandemic was kind of receding, and, less people were shopping online, you needed less online stores, all that type of stuff, they started firing people because, they overhired. So at what point do you classify it as a recession in terms of employment?
Yeah. I know the unemployment rate's going up. But speaking of Shopify, now that you brought it up, I think the CEO or the president of Shopify tweeted that he basically stitched Justin Trudeau's tweet about the capital gains tax that came up, and we were chatting a little bit about this, basically saying that you're killing entrepreneurship and you're killing people wanting to invest in Canada because as the saying goes, money flows where it's treated best. So starting a business, and it doesn't just affect people who are, realtors and lawyers, like boohoo, no one cares about them, but, doctors who have corporations as well, and chiropractors, physiotherapists, professions that clearly this country needs. And what a corporation is, for people that don't know, it's like a company where you pay an individual, and what you're doing is you're just deferring the tax for later on. That's kind of like a quick way to put it. I have a corporation myself. You're kind of just paying yourself less than what you would make an income to hold the money within a company, and then you can make investments within the company, basically. So I guess my whole point is, what did you think about the latest budget that the Liberals came out with? And I've actually noticed a slowdown in the real estate market since this happened. I've noticed less showings, less volume, more listings have come on. I don't know if it's a direct correlation, and maybe this will blow over, but I think a lot of people are upset with this policy. I just want to get your thoughts on it.
I'd be surprised if the slowdown in showings and listings is reflective of this, because the budget hasn't even been put in force, right? So I believe off the top of my head, it's supposed to come in end of June, I think.
Yeah, I think it's June 24th or 25th.
So if anything, you would have more showings if people disagree with it, right? They would want to sell their home sooner because of the capital gains changes.
I almost think that there's more listings, which is resulting in less showings because of
More supply.
More supply.
Fair enough. Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, overall, the budget had a lot of fluff to it from my viewpoint. I think it's an election year. I think they're trying to touch on a lot of different things. From the capital gains standpoint to an individual, most people won't be impacted unless you're selling your secondary residence and your capital gains are over 250,000. So, for anyone who doesn't know, up to 250,000 of capital gains income is treated to a 50% inclusion rate, at which point that 50% is then taxed, right? So if you're in the highest marginal tax bracket here in Ontario of roughly 52, 53%, if you sell $100,000 worth of real estate, we'll call it, and that's what you get as your capital gains, realistically, you're paying 26% tax on that. Whereas anything over the 250 is now taxed at the 2/3 inclusion rate, which would take that 26% up to about 33%.
Okay.
So it's not, by any means, it's not the end of the world to the individual. When it comes to the corporation, they're going to be taxed from the first dollar at 2/3 inclusion. But again, there's methods of getting around it, and there always have been. So I think there's a lot of people having knee-jerk reactions that, just want to push this back so that they can keep status quo rather than making changes. Because, I'm looking at a client right now who's got some money in his corp, and, we don't have to do anything because it's being invested in something called corporate class funds. And so the way those works is, like a traditional mutual fund, you invest into it, it grows for 10, 20, 30 years, however long, but it doesn't attract any sort of annual taxation when it comes to dividends, interest earned, capital gains, things like that, just in the way it's structured. And then when he goes to redeem out of it, the redemption is considered a return of capital first and foremost. So you start by taking out what you've put in. So you're not hitting any capital gains at that point.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And so you're deferring even further your capital gains. And so, this might be a hot take for a lot of people who own corporations, but there's ways to deal with it.
Right.
And it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction if you ask me. They also increased the lifetime capital gains exemption from 1.013 million to 1.25 million. And so that just means you can take more money out, without paying your capital gains.
Yeah, no, it's true. I said on the podcast too, I'm like, even if this goes into effect, like what would I do? I wouldn't sell right away because, we all know the Liberals are probably not going to be in office next year. And I don't think this policy is going to stay, truthfully. I think it'll eventually just get taken out because, Pierre Poilievre and his cabinet have talked about dropping income tax and, doing all these things where they're going to cut the budget and cut public employees and kind of trim the waste is what, his words, not mine. But I'm kind of this camp. We'll just keep holding it. And I don't think this bill will stay forever if that's what you're worried about. But given what you said, there are ways around it today. And the increase doesn't seem too detrimental for people to handle if they did need to sell in the next year and a half. So anyways.
Exactly. And to that point, why would you sell a piece of real estate when you can just borrow against it and pay even less?
Yeah.
Right? You'd borrow against it at whatever the interest rate is. And then you can extract those dollars and reuse them to reinvest or do whatever you want with them. Why sell the property when you can just access the equity?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Right?
Yeah.
So again, to be honest, I think the capital gains changes, some people might disagree heavily with me, but I think it's a smaller deal than most people are making out.
It's a nothing burger, as Kevin O'Leary would say.
Right.
All right. My last question that we always ask a guest is, where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Well, we're expecting a baby in June. So
Congratulations.
I expect myself to be more tired than I am now.
Yeah.
Hopefully, growing the business, hopefully talking to more people like yourself and like Brooke, and working with them to, try and identify new opportunities.
Awesome. And where can people find you if they want to get in touch? I'll put all of Peter's links down below, but just for the audience that's maybe driving or something like that, where can they find you?
Yeah, best place would be to send me an email just at peter@civitasfg.com. That's the quickest way to get a response. If I'm in a meeting, I won't pick up my phone. When I'm sitting with someone, that is the priority. And just send me an email if you want to chat.
Okay, cool. All right, guys, thanks for watching again. If you are new here or you haven't liked and subscribed to this video or channel, please do so. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please consider leaving us a review to help get this information out to more people so we can continue doing this for you guys and educating you guys as much as we can. And again, if you want to book a call with us just to chat about your real estate goals, you can do that in the first link in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and we have our 1-year episode coming next week. So stay tuned for that, and we appreciate you all. Take care.